computer. Okay, and we are recording. All right. Well, welcome to another of my video series. And this time I am pleased to announce that we have Steve Blank with us, ladies and gentlemen. Steve, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, this is a pleasure. So I teach at RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute. It's largely an engineering and science school, but I have the good fortune of being in their business school. So there's a business school that's associated with the whole campus and everything. And we're a resource. We're an entrepreneurial resource for people that have inventions wherever they come from on campus and things like that. So as a consequence, me and my little group of people, we teach a lot of entrepreneurial classes and run programs and things like that. And we always use the Steve Blank doctrine. So you are well known by our students already.
Well, I hope it's right.
So far, so good. You know what? I wish I knew your method before I launched my first failed product. So I'm happy to say I was at a company, the CEO of a company that made peach colored Christmas lights using quantum dot technology. Wow. And we were so excited about the peach, like nobody in the world has ever seen a peach LED. We were high-fiving each other in the lab. And in the real world, nobody cared.
That is the canonical get out of the building, and maybe we should have asked.
My God, I've learned so much, but oh well. Thank you for all you've done.
Sure.
Anyway, thanks for doing this. This is great. My students will get a lot out of this, I'm certain. Right now, in particular, I'm teaching a summer class. I got other classes in the fall, and they're going to be affected by the pandemic. So you can't get face-to-face with people and really understand what's going on. Do you have any suggestions for student entrepreneurs that are trying to do this customer discovery, customer development that you talk about in the days when there's no face-to-face?
Yeah, it's kind of like an oxymoron. It's how do you get out of the building when you can't get out of the building?
Exactly, yeah.
And it turns out that, and this, I'll be fair, it was a surprise to me as well, that for first calls, doing it online is actually better and more efficient. And while that might sound heretical, it kind of makes sense. It's not that you're not getting out of the building, you're getting out of the building virtually. And while you're missing all the social cues and all the body language cues, etc., first meetings are almost, though not always, almost all introduction, get to know you, first level discovery, rather than we're closing a deal or I need to understand whether you're leaning in or leaning out or looking at your watch or rolling your eyes. Typically, a first meeting can actually get you quite a bit of information for customer discovery just via Zoom. And in fact, when the recovery happens, I'm going to suggest for businesses, for people who are making sales calls that require multiple calls, you could eliminate that first physical call. I just believe and save a ton of money and time. It's not that subsequent calls don't require in-person meetings, much like discovery will require detailed in-person follow-up. But number one is it's good enough for a first level discovery call. But number two, what really makes this great is you could be so much more efficient by the number of first calls you could make. Is that the number of the discovery events you should be having should go up by 2x. And because of the third thing that happens or has happened and you ought to take advantage of is all the gatekeepers around the people you want to get to. Most of them aren't sitting in their house. And so therefore, most people who might have a business email also have a Gmail address you could probably guess. And you could probably get to senior execs and people you could never get to. My students are finding that out right now. Yeah. And while they might give you some time sitting in their t-shirt, it's like, and you don't even want to know if they're wearing pants or not. You will discover that you could get to more people with adequate first, discovery information, and you could get to people you could never get to before. So that's my take on customer discovery in the pandemic.
It almost seems like people have embraced Zoom and these video calls a lot more than they ever have too, just because they have to.
Right, there's no choice. I think what we're going to find out is that's going to potentially, as I suggested for just business calls, change the nature of work. Is that, people are going to be thinking about, if I'm in direct sales, how many of those calls at least those first calls need to be in person,
Yeah.
but also about work itself. If I was driving 45 minutes to a job where I sat in front of a computer doing email and video, for 8 hours a day and drove 45 minutes home, smart companies might be asking, so the point of this is what, 5 days a week? That is, you might decide that for social cohesiveness and connectivity, we need you in the building 1 or 2 days a week. But I certainly don't need you in the building 5 days a week if you could accomplish all these things elsewhere. And therefore, smart CFOs are going to get out their slide rule and calculator and go, well, wait a minute. Therefore, we could reduce our physical footprint, and therefore, it might have some impact um, on commercial office space in a way that I don't think people are predicting. It might also have a different impact on mass transit and rush hour commutes if people realize that at least half their time that they were spending in offices now could be spent, not that they want to stay home anymore, but it's not a necessity. There are obviously some jobs where you physically need to be present in manufacturing and other places, hospitals and healthcare, et cetera.
Do you see this changing, like traditional entrepreneurial ecosystems, like San Jose? Silicon Valley has a reputation. It's just this melting pot of ideas and lots of water cooler conversations or cafe conversations and things like that. Do you see that maybe morphing, and maybe you got a lot of startups in South Dakota or something like that because you can be remote?
Yeah, I think it's going to expand that ability to, people get a little more comfortable starting elsewhere. If you're asking me for a guess, I still think density and trust requires some physical presence in a way, and also presence in front of risk capital. Maybe I'm confused, but you might be getting seed round checks via Zoom, but I doubt you're going to get a 10 or $20 million round without meeting partners in a physical place and having board meetings in them. Though, it'd be interesting to see how many VCs are happy to have virtual board meetings rather than walk around the building and see the rest of the company.
Yeah.
Uh, so I don't know. I don't think it's the demise of clusters. I think it might provide an opportunity for other places, but you got to remember, at least in my mind, the problem of entrepreneurship everywhere wasn't that we didn't have entrepreneurs everywhere, is that we didn't have risk capital at scale everywhere.
Mm.
That is, you now, with my work and everybody else's work online, what you need to know is there. It wasn't that there weren't smart people in every city in the world. And it wasn't that you even couldn't nowadays not raise angel money in most towns and cities. It's whether how many places in the world can you raise $100 million or even $20 million?
Right.
That's kind of limited to fingers and toes. And I'm not sure the pandemic's going to change that. Maybe, but I don't think so.
You think it'll slow the pace of seed round funding and stuff like that, like after a pandemic happens? And does that money just dry up?
I think in the last 3 months, investors and remember, angels now are kind of different mindset, and they're individuals than professional VC funds. I think everybody has been kind of figuring out, what's going to happen here. What's the recovery look like? What's our lifeboat strategy? What are we investing in? What's changed? I think the more interesting thing is, what to invest in next. And what are the changes that are temporary versus permanent? I think everybody who used a video conferencing app understands that, thank goodness we had them in this state, and that the bandwidth, never faltered in most places in the world, but that they're really lacking some things we could just imagine. I mean, for business, imagine you had emotion and detection on facial recognition cues. I mean, that software exists, and they're just very expensive separate packages. Imagine they were actually integrated into a competent package like Zoom or Teams or something else as a business add-on. And now I could say, oh, what is that person really thinking? And
Right.
get at least a good estimate of what the body language and muscles in the face actually mean. Boy, you can imagine startups, piling on to that,
Yeah.
because I think we've now exposed 1 billion people to video conferencing in a way that was a casual use before, and now become a kind of a must-have on a day-to-day work. And so we're going to see startups in that. I think, we're going to see Anybody who's had kids at home trying to do remote education has kind of now understood the large distance that remote education needs to come, and more importantly, school administrators and school systems both see, number one is, no parent wants their kids to be at home for that extended period of time.
Yep.
But you can imagine if there was a better package, how to offload some of that stuff to home. If there
Mm.
was integrated software that worked, some of the biggest complaints I hear is none of this stuff works with each other. There is no integrated stuff. If I have kids in multiple grades using multiple subject matters, none of it, like, everything had different instructions and whatever. You can imagine huge opportunity here for school systems if you can, in fact, explain to them what the benefit is, because most parents want their kids out of that